for like oh, we just recorded, so I'm just gonna say like hello, and we are here in our session of envisioning new economies and cultures based on living systems. And thank you, David, for the invite. I see many familiar faces. Hi, Jeff. And I wanted to start by connecting us to just that beautiful nature that we all so much appreciate. We all have had that experience of being outside, being touching the water and running in the forest or walking by the stream. We have the experience. There's a little sound if somebody
can people could mute. If everyone could mute, please. Thank you very much.
Because there's like scratching or something. Thank you so much. Yes. And so what we're going to talk about today starts with life, starts with living systems. And we heard a lot about biomimicry. We heard a lot about how engineers and architects are using inspiration of nature to be able to create and innovate in all realms. So this is similar, but in the realm of the economy. And many say don't even consider biomimicry because we are not mimicking, we are nature. And I would assert that biology and culture and society might not be that distinct. Like if we see a body on our own bodies or our organizations or a forest, they seem to me that they can be described as this buzzing hive of communication, like our organs in our body. Like our skin, how much communication goes through our skin, like the touch of the wind or the hand of someone we love, or the excitement when we're excited, all our skin, just like, you know, we get chicken skin. And, you know, the organizations are constantly buzzing with all kinds of communication, all the way from gossip to all the way to strategy, to all the way to tasks and different forms of coordination, all kind of in the same way of sparking life. And as well as the jungle, you know, the jungle and the forest are a conversation in between the flora and the fauna, in between the insects and the fungi and the mycelia, a high level interaction and interdependence that create vitality because of the patterns of flow that they have. And this is our keyword here for this meeting today: flow and interconnectedness. Because the last time I checked, friends, we were one. And in that oneness, what makes that oneness? That oneness is that super organism of planet Earth, conformed by other superorganisms, and social organisms and our own beings are this collective of impressive flows. And that's what we're going to talk about. I want us to start by thinking or feeling, is the universe talking to us? And how is it talking to us? Because if we want to be able to create systems, social systems, human social systems that are based upon those living systems, we need to speak its language. And I placed a quote on the webpage that for this event that I'm going to read, that is very pertinent for today. And it's from John Fullerton, where he says, "The universal flows, patterns, and principles the cosmos uses to create stable, healthy, and sustainable systems throughout the real world can and must be used as a model for economic system design." And you could Google the 8 principles of regenerative economies from John Fullerton, and you will see what are the 8 principles that he places in his for his own financial systems design. But there's one about that he calls robust circulatory flow. So here we go again, flow. So just as human health depends on the robust circulation of oxygen and nutrients and hormones, as well, the economy is healthy depending on the flows of money. I mean, what happens when there's hoarding? What happens when the money doesn't flow or the information doesn't flow? What would happen if we would have a mechanism, ways of seeing how the resources, where they're needed, and being able to make them go where they're needed in the right moment? Or the goods and the services, all those exchanges. And as well, our bodies and all systems also flush toxins and they nourish the cells. And at the same way, we can do that with our economy. And I want to quote one of my favorite authors. I think that David, you and I spoke about her. I would have loved to meet this person, Jane Jacobs. And she said, when asked the question, what are economies for? And the answer is to partake in your own fashion of a great universal flow. To partake in your own fashion of a great universal flow. Not exactly that kind of description they probably would go and give at the School of Economics, regardless, a very important, very, very important one. If we see an ecosystem, it could be seen as this conduit of energy, this conduit of flow. The ecosystems that thrive, like if you think of a tropical forest, one stream of energy does so much, isn't it? It just nurtures the earth. There's receptivity, of course, and then that receptivity opens up and the water flows down and it just creates all this life. It impacts the fungi, the mycelia, things grow, and then one thing eats from another, and then we have these circular economies, which is a very circular way of flow. So to think about and connect it to the economy, and we have to speak about currencies. And the first invite I'm going to give to you today is to expand our notion of economy beyond money. One thing that we constantly observe in our work is a lack of creativity, because people think about the economy and immediately think money. Look, all the speculative cryptocurrencies that we have around, they are thinking money. They're not separated from money. They still need it. And thinking that our economy is about money is like thinking that bees are about honey. And bees are not about honey. Bees are about whole systems' well-being. No bees, no food system, no wealth, no economy. Wealth as well-being is bigger and way beyond financial capital. We have social capital and resource capital, and we have human capital, and we have natural capital, and we have spiritual and psychological and cultural, so many types that we need to be able to go meta in and be able to see, be able to make visible other forms of wealth, to be able to even try to talk about the economy in a different way. So now this might be a little bit like too abstract, but I promise we're gonna we're gonna keep breaking it into pieces. But Eric Harris Brown from Holochain says, money is but an instance of an expressive capacity that is in the process of evolving. So if you think about money as language, to give it another kind of analogy, and let's say that our ancestors would say, ugh, or wee, to signify things, like here comes the tiger, not the dragon, the tiger, but don't worry, it's eaten, Then we develop phonemes, and then we develop the alphabet, and when we develop poetry and all the beautiful wealth and knowledge that we have in our world. Well, money in this analogy would be ugh. We don't have the expressive capacity to really talk about all the dimensions of wealth that are possible. And nature has a very specific wealth building pattern at its heart. And I would say that at the heart of its economic system, and that is the key to its success. And wealth does not belong to the individual. Wealth belongs to the collective, does not belong to the parts. It's built and held in the commons. Wealth, it's about creating and evolving the collective through relationship. So with that ground established, I could go back and say, okay, so what about, let's go back to nature. And so let's name 3 different expressions. I picked 3 different expressions of superorganisms that we're also going to talk about it on how they express in our economy and why and how are that linked to currencies. So first, one of those expressions I want to talk about is trade and exchange. So if you think about the mycorrhizal fungi, they forage decayed matter and water, but that's not all they do. Once they do that, they start trading. Yes, friends, they trade, and they trade these nutrients with every dwelling parland on Earth. And in exchange, they get this photosynthetic fuel. And not only there, they don't stop there. Then they're able to move this photosynthetic sugar to mother plant, to seedlings, and then they start transmitting signals in between them, and they start to creating all sorts of information, passing all sorts of information. I mean, where is our mycorrhizal fungi in our human systems? I think that we have to develop something similar. Wouldn't it be amazing? But the keywords here are trade and the exchange. I mean, I have never seen a plant taking the sugar and putting into a bank in Switzerland for hoarding for later seasons. They definitely have something where the flow is constant. They constantly go and create more life to be able to satisfy their needs, but also that in relationship in between other actors and other nodes. Then we think about bees. Bees, oh, well, I was thinking about bees all the time because they're one of my very, very best friends. And but one aspect that I want to name today is language. I mean, imagine a communication system. They have 17 symbolic chemical words, twice as many body language modifiers, almost as complex as our own language. So we have language as these expressions, we have trade, we have exchange, we have flow of resources that are part of what nature brings to the table for us to be able to observe and learn from. And within this, I'm going to mention the harvester ants, because these ants like send patrollers, patroller ant leave the nest, and then, they go where the last foragers were seen, and then, to see if it's all safe, and then go like, okay, safe. Then the foragers go and they start to, forage out and get the seeds, and then they put it in the floor, which then triggers another response, and then a worker collects it, and then they take it to the storage room, and then the forager waits to see if the other friends and teammates are coming back, and when they come back, they send another group of foragers. They go out. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the leafcutter ants. I mean, I'm going to stop there because it's just like you could read a lot about it. I'm sure in between the works of David and the works of Tansy Woolley Barker, and their incredible stories about network intelligence and how these simple rules of engagement and their local global sensory perception helps to stream data and creates mechanisms for trusts and to exclude parasites. But for me, the part that we want to focus around this particular story is feedback loops and sophisticated signal systems. And back to our body, what happens if our flow in our body stops? Well, we get sick or we die. So flows are unhealthy patterns of flow is a key aspect of why systems are alive and why they are harmonious or they're not. Paul Crayfall distinguishes as well, and he says whether it's an upward spiral flows of life or downward spiral where they decay and die. So we think about this and then we go, wow, where does these capacities and these behaviors come from? These processes, these protocols, these sacred agreements, is there encoded in their DNA? Perhaps each of these agents encodes signals according to a certain protocol. Isn't it magic? And then with this, having established that, we get into collective intelligence, language, economics, trading and exchanges, and flow. Then let's look back into human social organisms. When I speak and we speak about social organisms, we are as cells in those social organisms. If you think about that, we, the people, operate at the cellular level, whether it's in our families, our corporations, our institutions, our governments. All these are larger social organisms. And these organisms also have their self-preservation instincts. They have autopoietic behaviors. They're creative. They maintain patterns of integrity, patterns of flow. So it's not just a beautiful analogy, friends. It's like superorganisms in nature and social organisms in humans are very much alike. And if we think about those capacities and we think, where do they come from? And we think about DNA, like, oh, wow, the ants in their DNA, they already have the instructions of their behavior. Well, then what is our DNA? Not of our body, but of our social organisms. So in collective intelligence work, we describe that the DNA of social organism, we call them invisible architectures. And not because they're invisible because we're not trained to see them. But very much as DNA in the individual, they do create different behaviors and different patterns within the collective. And those invisible architectures that are so important for our social systems, I bet that if I ask you all, you can already start clicking and say, wow, what is that DNA? What is the DNA that establishes how we coordinate our actions, or how we interact with one another, or how we process information and how information flows in our collective, or how do we exchange resources, or how, and well, we could probably get into, money is definitely one. But it's not only money, folks, it's currencies. Currencies, it's we assert that currency are a function, a kind of nervous system, kind of a signaling system for how information moves and how we coordinate action around these social organisms. Like if you think, even, this is ridiculous for me to think about, or for us to think about, but even money. It is us that create all the value, but if we don't have money, we don't seem to be able to organize our labor without it. And it's not money that creates value, it's us. So how come? How much is it ingrained in the fabric of our being that we're not able to mobilize without it? But the issues are, and I'm not here to speak about why money doesn't work, but we know that we need to transcend it to be able to really meet our evolutionary capacity. And so here's when we start to get into the realm of currencies and how distinct the work of meta currency is in terms of other people that work in currency design. Because if you Google currency, you'll probably find tokens everywhere, and cryptocurrencies everywhere, and NFTs and non-fungible tokens and this and that, which are very valuable aspect of the ecosystem of currencies that are arising, but they're not the whole picture, and not necessarily designed according to living system principles, or to be able to create outward spiral flows of wealth and well-being. So I'm going to give you a definition, and then we're going to look at it closer because it's going to be too abstract. And then I'm going to name some examples. And then with those examples, we can go to other Q&A and, be more interactive among us. I'm going to drink a little bit of water. Okay, so as I was naming, living systems are alive because of flow. It's not because of the objects, but because the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness among these different objects, different actors, those that create more life, more well-being. And so if living systems are alive because of flows, let me give you a description of currencies that you probably haven't heard before. And it's current C. It's a way to make visible, enable, or shape a flow. So let's look at it closer. Enable, shape, make visible. Enable and shape what? Flows, cool. What else? Behavior. Every currency, doesn't matter how small, will shape a behavior. So if you think on currencies as symbol systems that enable behaviors, well, then a perfect example are likes. Facebook likes, we all use them. And we know that many assert even that we have become a very narcissistic society because of the likes. So one could say it's not a very well-designed currency because people got anxious because they don't have their likes, or they're posting something and looking, deception, this, sad if they don't like it, if they don't have enough likes, or worried, or whatever, And now we seem to be trapped in those likes into regards to all the social network, and then the social networks and the social media and how that is designed. But it's definitely showing a flow of engagement. So not all currencies at that point to flows are going to be well-designed currencies. Some of them are just going to suck, and we have to make them better. We have to rethink them. That's why many people point, when thinking about reputation currencies, many people point to, but we don't want to end like China and have the kind of surveillance, or, we could perfectly go there, but we also can use reputation as a marker for something else that is meaningful for each of us, for all of us, for our communities. Think, for example, in the case of a post-monetary economy, where I love to think about this example. It's a project that lives in our heart that we hope to design sometime, that is called Land Weaving Society. So let's think about all this network of communities of intent and eco-villages that are around the world. And, instead of when you go out for a walk, what happens when you go for a walk? You go for a walk and you don't walk like how you want. You normally walk like this because you find private properties and you have to go around them. So in the case of communities of intent and intentional communities, eco-villages that have large amounts of land, what if instead of do not trespass, you found a signal that says, a sign that says, welcome to the Land Weaving Society members? And you go in with your phone and you find a map and you're happy because it points to the farmhouse and certain attractions in the land, the garden, and where the garden is at. And you're happy, walking around, you see children. And then somebody comes and says, hi, friend. And you go like, bum, bum. And it was like, oh, you're part of the Land Weaving Society. Oh, wow, you've been in those communities. Do you know such and such? Oh, do you know that because you have this amazing reputation, you can use the farmhouse? Please go ahead. Oh, my, you could even park your RV here for 2 weeks if you want, or use the guest house. So imagine that your reputation, the value that you have created in other communities, gives you access to different types of resources, moving us into a post-monetary economy, allowing us, enabling us to share resources in a way that is very, very relational and very intimate. You can even extend it further into the currency world and say, like, you have your phone, and artificial augmented reality, and augmented reality is like the applications like Snapchat or even Instagram, or the ones that you look the sky with and that shows you the constellations, which is basically a layer on top of the real, or on top of real life, that just gives you information about things. Or Pokemon Go. Probably many people saw the young ones going in the street, like chasing Pokemons with their phones. Well, imagine that you arrive to the community and then you see a floating token, and you go like cling, cling, and it tells you, wow, could you water the plants, please? And then you go ahead and you water the plants, and you go like, oh, done. Okay, thank you, cling. And that activates the next the next task for somebody else. And it gives you a point, a reputation point, because you left the place better than the way you found it. So those are creative things in which we could be activating flows and enabling different types of behavior and activating currencies in our minds in a way that is larger than money, but it goes into as well reputation. Currencies. Many people don't think about, for example, tickets as a currency, but they definitely shape a flow. I mean, if you receive a ticket to the theater, it has what is the file, that the row in which you have to sit, and what is the number, and what is the entry from where you come in. So it definitely allows us for collective intelligence. It has a way to coordinate our actions and coordinate our flow. So it's a currency. And that enables and shapes behavior, enables and shapes flows. And you can think further than just information and resources. You can also think, and we thought about different ways of reputation, for example. You can also think like standards like organics, like USDA. It's a way of seeing a flow of production of food in a way that I consider very valuable, because I like to eat organic. I like my food without pesticides and poison. Thank you. So USDA organic allows me to see a flow that has happened over time. So I'm hoping that this is grounding that a little bit more. And the part of currencies as symbol systems that make visible flows is one of my very favorite, because this is where we go to signal systems. For example, and this is me not having my computer, but there is a page called WikiHow. And in WikiHow, people go and contribute their time to be able to create little instruction sets on how to do all kinds of stuff. From a braid to a dish, to getting rid of pests in the garden, to all sorts of practical things. And they create a wiki, and then that wiki has a community dashboard. And that community dashboard, when a volunteer comes, let's say they say like, I really want to contribute to WikiHow. I love it. I use it so much. I want to be a contributor. So you arrive and you see a dashboard that shows a set of currencies that show you the state of different aspects of WikiHow that need help or are doing great. And how do they do that? Well, they have different symbols. They have a sun. They have a sun with a cloud. They have a cloud with little rain. And then they have a cloud with a thunder. So when I arrive to WikiHow and you arrive to the community dashboard, you see, for example, writing articles or editing the articles, or the different teams and aspects in which you can contribute. And on top of all those, you would see the symbol. So Right away, you can see if a particular aspect of work is sunny. They don't really need the help that much. They're great, but maybe you don't have a lot of time and you rather contribute to the sunny part. But you have more time, so you could go to the thunder where there's needs a lot of work and you can contribute to that. So you could rapidly organize ourselves, rapidly identify with that feedback loop. You can rapidly identify where to contribute right from the dashboard. So that is a very interesting way in which, you know, we could see and do sense making. And a lot of our technology these days don't have that kind of dashboards. We have a lot of dashboards for sure. Everybody has their Facebook dashboard, and then you have the stream, and the algorithm chooses what the algorithm considers that you want to see, you know. But what if we would have organizations where we would have, for example, dashboards that will tell us the emotional state of everybody in the organization in a given day? Like, for example, using a rainbow of colors, where we decided beforehand that red means I'd rather be home, or I'm not having a great day, I'm not super focused, and purple means give it to me, baby, I'm on, you know. And suddenly, you know, we have a spectrum of colors showing in our app, and we can see where the organization is at in any given day, just like that. And it's not important what we do with the feedback. The important part is the feedback itself, the signal. Because if one day we came to our app and we say that the screen is red, and we go like, okay, we're all red. Either we all go home, or maybe we sit and talk because something's going on. And then we could have a process, a pro-social process to kind of erase what is the elephant in the room. What is that we're not wanting to see? Why are we all in red? Perhaps it's one of those days that we're surprised with a pandemic going on, you know, and we just want to sit and talk. So there's different ways in how to organize and how to work with currencies. We have used it in all sorts of ways. For example, in the Agile Learning Centers, they happened to be a group, Agile Learning Center. In Agile Learning Centers, small kids and bigger kids, they're all in the same share space together. And the bigger kids were the smaller kids were driving nuts the bigger kids with all their noises and screens. So what the Agile Centers did is they placed a sensor that would identify a high pitch. And when there was a scream that had that high pitch, it rang a little alarm. I know it was not an alarm, it was a light that turned on. And that kid had to go to a room where they could keep shouting, but it was like a room for shouting. Nobody could really listen. They could keep playing loud, but be playing loud there. And what started to happen is they were regulating themselves. They started a self-regulation process just because they had that signal. So it's definitely inviting us to create and to look into different ways into organizing and designing currencies for our world. And the last example I'm going to name before we go interactive is the time banks. Many of you probably already heard about time banks, but it's based on a design of a type of currency that we call mutual credit. And one of the aspects I love about mutual credit is because it does not incentivize hoarding. So there is ways of designing currencies that incentivize flow. Now, our monetary system doesn't necessarily incentivize flow, is it? We have to get the incentive for flow. Or Bitcoin, does it incentivize flow? I don't think so. Every time everybody wants to, like pay something with a Bitcoin that, is worth this one day and this that other way, are you going to buy your carrots with Bitcoin? I don't think so. It's not exactly for incentivizing flow. So we have to think about what are the different things that we can twist and turn, the different characteristics that can make a currency to be able to create more life, more behaviors of goodness, more well-being for the collective, just as nature does. And in this case, time banks is very special because in time banks, they did something really beautiful, which was to say, 1 hour of your time and 1 hour of my time, whether if I'm a physicist, world renowned, and you are a storyteller in your community, is worth the same. And so when we exchange in a time banks, you exchange hours. So everybody has brand new 24 hours a day, and everybody can trade their hours. But you don't barter them. You don't mean it's not direct. It's not me, trading with David and David trading back with me. I could trade an hour of a coaching with David, and David can trade then an hour of coaching with Kurt, and then with Jeff can trade it with Gavin, and Gavin then we can start creating pluses and minuses in the system, and the sum will always be zero. So it's some kind of IOU, but where the monetary mass or the mass of currency that is issued by the transaction itself. And so Michael Linton says that it's free money because it's our money. It doesn't belong to the bank. It belongs to the community. And the community can create all sorts of wonders with managing the issuance of the currency and having different types of credit limits to organizations or institutions or individuals or the governance circle of the community. And there's a lot of magic that can be done there. You can even put some demurrage so that people that don't spend their hours, then they get depleted in a year. You can do a lot of wondrous designs with it. But who wants to hoard time? Doesn't really make sense, does it? So many say, wow, but they don't have, the time banks haven't really been successful. They close. Well, if you think about time banks activating social fabric in the neighborhoods and communities, and then, yeah, sure, many time banks disappear, but the social fabric stays. So maybe not all currencies are, it's not a maybe actually, not all currencies are forever. They have a completion process. They have a moment of death and redemption. And so that doesn't mean the currency was not successful. It just means that the flow shifted, the social fabric was created, and then the currency is not needed anymore, because once I know Kurt or I know Gavin, I don't need time to trade with them. I might just go and trade directly with them because we know each other. We're friends now. So I hope that with these examples, you're able to see how we are creators of these social organisms that are orchestrated through all kinds of currencies. That there is a breakthrough in expressive capacity for us humans as we learn how to use these currencies to be able to create even more flow among us, and that we can make more of those feedback loops visible so that we can organize better and achieve all kinds of wonderful things. And I think with that, I'm gonna give it pass to David, and from there we can go to another aspect of our time together.
So thank you so much, Fernanda. I have to say, I love watching you in addition to listening to you, because your hand motions are so expressive. So it was a second language, basically, and it was just wonderful. I envy you, your body language. But that was so wonderful. And so I think that one of the things I want to do, and I'm actually thinking, well, let's just open it up for questions. And raise your virtual hands, please. That automatically creates a queue. You're also welcome to write some things in chat. And then let's just begin the Q&A. But at some point, I want, Ferananda, for you to describe what offerings are present on the Commons engine, so that anyone can learn more and get involved and make use of the tools that and the trainings that you're offering, and then to take our turn, so that we can begin to knit together basically our respective communities. But first let's have some some questions, and I'd be astonished if there weren't questions. So let's have some hands raised, and I will not be the first. I want to be the fourth person to ask a question. So that means I need 3 brave people to step forward. Jeff.
It was really great listening to you, and especially because there's so many like new ideas that I have been inspired by here. And my question is it seems like so much of our technology, whether it is technology, used for exchange of value or social exchange, is focused on the outer. It starts with our face and what we do, and we kind of measure or value ourselves by the external. But it seems to be an imbalance because not enough emphasis on the internal, the really our deepest parts, that kind of get down to really what motivates us, our heart of hearts. And it seems like, that's true for social media. It's true for even, modern day currency design. And so the question I have is that in designing flows that facilitate movement and facilitate well-being, how do we balance this out, the kind of the inner and the outer?
Give me the last piece, please, again.
Yeah, so it seems like so much of what is being designed is designed with kind of the form or the formatory, the external. And it's harder to get to kind of the internal, the emotional, the things that are more closely related to being, not doing, to our essence versus our form. And it's even difficult because we don't have as much even language developed around that, and also a lot of the design thinking, whether it be currency design thinking or technology architecture, is really focused more to the outer than the inner. And I'm having a hard time to even articulate it. But my question is that how do we kind of cultivate and be able to design systems that bring out more of the inner essence of our experience, to balance out the external form of our experience?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me go back to the definition and say that currencies are symbol systems to enable or shape or make visible flows. And what are the flows of inner experience that you would want to see or that you would want to incentivize or shape? So let's say that in, I don't know, a meditation class, we would want to incentivize meditation. Or we count hours, and then people could be seeing in their leaderboards who's having more hours of meditation. I mean, this is not new, right? Meditation apps already do that, but that doesn't reflect the experience that they had. It's probably, more clunky and more in terms of, oh, I got a star, and then 5 stars became a golden star, and then 5 golden star became a purple star, and then, and then they have that kind of ratings to be able to track performance. But I think that your question is, well, but that doesn't reflect that somebody just sat down and just thought all the time, that doesn't reflect how they advance in their practice. So what is that flow that we would want to see? Is it like, How does it influence? Am I a kinder person? Do I feel more compassionate and open? Did my stress lowered? You know, we have to be careful as well when we design these type of currencies to think that all currencies can be in a, nominal, or they can have numbers, or they can have little stars, or you can have little flowers, or any kind of symbols like that. Because sometimes we just need the subjective experience. We just need the storytelling aspects. We need, the deep wisdom is probably not on that type of metrics, and but if we wanted to see, like, let's say we speak about this example a lot in our work. Let's say that gratitude, like we wanted to see gratitude or kindness in the system. And let's say that every time that somebody does for me something kind in my community, I just click a button and that goes into a map of the community. And then when I see the map of the community, I see its radiance and I go like, wow, tons of acts of kindness. And I'm able to see that and I'm able to relate to it like a living map of current behaviors and ways in which the people are interacting with each other. Like that's the kind of things I would love to see and to be able to make visible. And again, being careful that a lot can happen when we think outside of a first person or outside of a third person objective type of metric, but that we go into what Nora Bateson calls warm data, that we go into reflecting the relationship with people, that goes into reflecting and expressing my heart with people. And then maybe, I'm thinking, I'm trying to click with examples. I'm thinking the dot collector of Ray Dalio, where they have like a grid of people. Let's say that all of us were in a grid and the horizontal level, all our pictures were in the horizontal and the axis, and the vertical axis would also have oral pictures. And when we were making decisions or public speaking or talking in the team meetings, we would rate each other about different types of qualities that we observe on one another, just for ourselves, not as a competition for anybody to know, but as a feedback that is for me to be able to receive so that I can perform better. There's many multiple ways, but I think that we are, and you name it beautifully, Jeff, by saying there's almost no words to describe it. I think we're in the time when we do have the opportunity to design living maps, and this is a new expressive capacity where we actually kind of bootstrap ourselves into a new language. And through that new language, these new patterns of language, we can then be able to see more of the interiority of the system and not only the exteriority of the system.
Okay, that's great. So Gavin is number 2. I sure hope there's a number 3 because I want to speak so much, but someone has to come before me after Gavin. So somebody else, please raise their hand.
Sure. So I think this is really cool. And as you were talking about it, part of what I've learned over time is that what's really important for human beings is that things be intrinsically rewarding, and so we want to do things because they're good for our group. And I love the idea of currency as a way to, to see flow and see what's happening and that sort of thing. And I love what you just said about compassion and generosity and being able to, so if we wanted to see compassion and generosity, I think if we look at ourselves as like a superorganism, then I think I don't care who the compassion or generosity is associated with. I just want to see that it's growing and it's moving through the group. So I'm looking at it, and maybe there's a cancer cell, so maybe I want to see that somebody's not contributing or something. But short of that, I'm because if there's a book you might be familiar with it called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Cohen, and it's all about A's and praise and gold stars and things like that, and how they really kill the whole intrinsic motivation thing in human beings. So, but if I'm looking at this lens, not like that I'm trying to get stars, but I'm trying to get our group to be functioning at a high level, then I'm looking at it from the group level. So I don't necessarily need to see somebody who was compassionate. So yeah, I should click the thing to say a compassionate thing happened. I saw a compassionate thing happen in the group. I don't necessarily need it to be associated with a certain person, but I want to know that the group is feeling that way. Or like you said before, if the group is all seeing, we're all red today, there's a big issue, we maybe should stop and just talk about that. So I just thought that was an amazing kind of way of looking at it. And that maybe goes with the internal versus external thing, because like internally, I'm trying to, I want to be intrinsically rewarded. I want to do the things that are good for my group. I just want to be generous and compassionate and altruistic and things like that. So I just want that sort of stuff to happen, both for me and for the other people in the group. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Yes, I think I did paste the link there. Look at the video. I think you'll like it. It's a class that we call Currency Design for Social Change Agents. And there we speak a lot about dimensions of incentives and how economic incentives, as you were mentioning, do kind of sometimes skill the thing, but also we say when a flow is working, why would you want to put a currency in if the flow is already working? You might kill it. It's like, for example, this is well known. I don't know if I want to go to that example, but this is an example in Mexico where they have a niño, like a little baby Jesus that they call niñopa. And the story goes that the niñopa, when the niñopa lives in a certain household, that household has to feed the whole community for over a year. But the way they can do that is because the niñopa performs miracles. And the niñopa performs miracles because when the niñopa is in a certain household, it activates the gift economy and the flow goes to that particular household. So people arrive in the morning with food, and people arrive to volunteer to cook, and people arrive to volunteer to serve and clean, and they feed the community every single day. So there the token could be the niñopa, who is the one that activates the miracles, but the miracle is in the community. The miracle is in the activation of the community. So can you imagine if they put a time currency there to see who is participating in ours? It would kill it. Why would you want to do that? If the niñopa has been feeding people for 2 decades, and without any currency, he's a currency in himself. So when things are working, there's no need to place it. The problem is scalability, because then when things need to scale, we lose that visibility.
That is so cool. So just so in love with all of this. So JP.
Oops, hello, can you see me? Yes. Hello. So good to meet you finally, Ferananda, and thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. We have many joined threads, let's just say. So my question to you, the way I look at where we are is we're in this amazing moment where we can, for the first time in a great while, question our unquestioned assumptions and explore what we mean by value. So what I want to know from you is, after all of this exploration that you've done, what unconscious, unquestioned assumption have you unearthed that could be transformed? And what do you see our definition of value morphing into kind of collectively? Just some little questions.
Little, she says. Thank you for that question, JP. I very much appreciate it. There's one of my very favorite ones. Well, actually, let me start by saying remember that I was speaking about language as part of the DNA for social organisms. And one of the things I love to talk about when thinking about how we transform the economy is language, because it's one thing that we can immediately transform. Like, how many of us say, pay attention? How many of you pay attention? Why are we paying attention? Why don't we give it freely? I mean, we do, but we still say pay attention, or return on investment. Or when somebody doesn't have money, I mean, I have many times in my life, I haven't had any money, and I never considered myself broke. However, we say I'm broke, or such person is broke. And so that definitely places a specific frame in the person's mindset. And suddenly a person without money suddenly becomes broke. And that is not necessarily compatible with their inner reality or who they are as human beings. And so catch your language, because inner language is one of the main ways to transform our social organisms right off the bat. Especially now that language can be so well now, it has always been able to be weaponized. Now, in terms of language and value and capital, we can think about wealth, value, and capital in a very kind of similar way. So for me, it has been transforming from monocapitalism, or almost like monocrops, into multi-capitalism. Which when we see that one monocrop, definitely kills the soil, and there's no sufficient diversity, because nature loves diversity, and there's uniqueness that it actually benefits from, extreme amounts of uniqueness and diversity. The same one, if we look at capital as multi-capitalism, then we start to think as value not only money, but also our relationships, our health, our safety, our education, our, so if I asked you all in this moment, what is wealth? Can you write in the chat, what is wealth for you? Let's do this a minute. Let's give us our minute to write in the chat. What is wealth for you? Not a definition of wealth, but what is wealth? Having something to give. So giving is wealth. Peace, yes. Plural forms of value, nurturing community, being in a nurturing community, life, well-being, belonging truly, gratitude. Social connections. A little bit more, 20 seconds. Feeling of home, trust. So when we ask ourselves what is wealth, I don't see relationship and connection, interconnection. I don't see anybody wrote money. What's up with you guys? Nobody wrote money. So, but we wrote belonging, education, safety, feeling of connectivity, true belonging, living in community, that's true wealth. But if I ask you, give me the name of someone wealthy, are you going to think about someone rich, or someone that has all the things you have written in this chat? Me, says JP. Yeah, me too. I'm one of the extremely most wealthy persons in the planet, for sure. And that's because we have to kind of give wealth a new meaning. Wealth is well-being. It has always struck me that the word heal for health exists, right? We say it's a healer, the person that heals. You have health, the person that has, well-being in their physical body. But with wealth, we don't say wheel, do we? WEAL. We don't say that the people that dedicate themselves to producing massive amounts of well-being or helping others in creating value and well-being, are they wheelers? They're definitely not healers. They'll probably be wheelers, or people that create social systems or design social systems. I consider myself a wheeler. And I think that we need to recuperate that word, because why are we not using it? So that's one of the biggest for me, JP, definitely that part of wealth and wheeling. Wheeling is to wealth. Wealth is to health, what wheeling is to healing. So think about that one, because I believe we have to, in this time and age, reconnect to wealth in a totally different way. And as I said, money is ugh, and money is an instance of a capacity in the process of evolving. Then what is wealth when we reach that whole spectrum evolution that we all so much long for?
So that was so great. It's my turn at last. So much to say. I wanted to just describe something called dual inheritance theory from evolutionary science, which simply says that in our species, there's two streams of inheritance: the genetic stream that exists in all species, plus the cultural stream. And that the cultural stream, our symbolic meaning systems, are the cultural equivalent of our DNA. And so there's very much a relationship between what's on the inside, as Jeff was alluding to, everything inside our heads, and what's on the outside, how we act. And so the inner and the outer are inextricably linked. And I think that, basically all aspects of your talk, Ferananda, have addressed that issue. That how we act depends on how we think. How we use language depends on how we think. Every word is informing our behavior. And then when you define currency broadly to be currency, which I love, then I think we're seeing that these are other symbols that are directing flows, which is exactly what you said. So much depends on how we think about it. And that's why the typical economic mindset is not capable of resulting in these behaviors. We have to change the way we think along the lines that you're discussing in order for us to behave in the ways that we are. I wanted to give two examples of this kind of praise currency that are familiar to me. One is an amazing program called the Good Behavior Game, which is, you might say, a classroom management technique for small children. But unlike the token economy, the gold stars and things like that, it's very much oriented towards praise and the group working well. And by the simple expedient of having praise notes, if somebody does something nice, you write a little praise note, and that by itself works wonders. There's that empirical fact, and is a form of currency. You would describe that as a form of currency, I believe. And then Wikipedia, which is such a shining example of an organization that I think is doing things right. And I'd love at some point, Ferananda, I bet you've done some thinking on it, just to describe Wikipedia in terms of your currency model. But and I had a conversation, which is recorded, I'll provide the link to it, with one of the senior volunteers of Wikipedia, Anne Klin, in which we described Wikipedia as a superorganism. But praise is big there too. I mean, basically they call them cookies. That if you've been hardworking at Wikipedia and somebody appreciates that, they send you a cookie and you feel great. And so so much of this is like the native emotional equipment, which exists in small scale societies and what we would call non-monetary economies, that in some ways comes naturally, although structure is needed. And then what's needed is to recreate it, scale it up, or or otherwise recreated, because in modern life it's lacking for one reason or another. And so it has to be recreated. What used to come much more naturally is now has to be recreated. So that's a bunch of comments. I'm not even sure there's a question in there for Ferananda, but if you please reflect on that. Then let's have Charlie speak, and then let's turn to describing our respective programs, so that people can learn more.
Thank you so much. I love those examples. I love the examples about, simple currencies of gratitude, and how, humans love when we are seen. I wonder, David, and this is a question for all the evolutionary biologists in the room, but how does nature does that? Does nature have a need for praise? Are they certain societies that are definitely influenced by that kind of reward system? Is it more like in the baboons, chimpanzees, I would assume, more like than the ants, or I don't know, even and I wouldn't think the trees, but is it something that happens in nature?
Oh, that's such a long conversation, Ferananda. We have to do part 2 of this or something. Let's go to Charlie, and then make sure that we talk about our respective offerings.
Yes.
And then if there's time, we could come right back to that.
Well, thanks, David. So I'm Charlie Schweik. I'm a professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I'm also the president-elect of the International Association for the Study of the Commons. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this webinar. And David and pro-social people, thank you for creating this. I don't know if I've missed others, but this is just awesome. I'm really excited about more. I'm chuckling because in chat, I was starting to write, Ferananda, that was an awesome question. I want to hear the answer to that. Secondly, Todd, you put in chat something about knowledge commons. That's one of the areas that our International Association of the Study of the Commons thinks about. So it's wonderful to be continuing to think about that. Before I get to my question, one other thing, David and others, so, I'm schooled in the Eleanor Ostrom area, institutional analysis and governing the commons things. And the thought occurred to me, she's got, a design principle that's about graduated sanctions. The thought occurred to me in this discussion, is there such a thing of graduated praise? Which is an interesting thought I've never had before. So let me turn to the question. So I teach environmental policy. For about 10 years, I've noticed a growing lack of hope in my students, undergraduates, graduate students, but undergraduates I'm thinking about mostly, but it's across the board. The current system currently isn't working, and they're looking for hope. And so turning, Ferananda, to your discussion about flows, the thought occurs to me, I'm fascinated by, and I want to look more at Commons Engine and the work you're doing on that front. Do you have thoughts about transition as a flow? How we move from the current dominated currency to, I love the term multi-capitalism, or, the multi verse of currencies. I think that's a component of the hope my students are looking for. So I'm just wondering if you have a reaction to that. Thank you. And thank you everybody for this event.
Wow, Charlie, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your presence and for giving your presence so much and enjoying this lecture. And wow, transitioning as a flow, right? We're in this huge flow. So my first thought, and I have to really ponder more on this, it's really interesting, is that it's such a big one that we probably would have to part it into smaller ones, because it's like the first thought that comes to me is kind of bridge building, right? Like building a bridge in between the old economy and the new ones, because we still have to pay rent and gas and, you know, those things that we need are especially survival, you know, basic needs. If we would create currencies, local economies that would help people to fulfill their needs. For example, in the fellowship of intentional communities, Twin Oaks and those communities, where they are probably the ones that are doing the most socialist experiments, like where they put all the money at the center. Can you imagine that? Talking about shadow practice. And everybody lives with $200, $300, but they have all their needs met. So I'm not saying we become socialists. What I'm saying is there is ways to transition the economy to take care of our universal human needs. So for example, in Brazil, they have a currency called Curitiba, like that people get to Curitivas with collecting trash. And then they exchange those trash tokens into transportation tokens. So that's a way to fulfill a universal basic need. So in Commons Engine, our offering, you know, we have a self-paced workshop that I put the link there, and we have to update our website, but right now we're creating what we call medium touch and high touch kind of interventions. And medium touch are cohorts of people that would come together to design their own currencies, because this is meta, right? If we're building the bridges, we need to be able to be interconnected and not just create in silos. In some ways, you could think that Bitcoin might be a transitioning thing, or Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. You know, my way of describing it is like if the blockchain or Bitcoin would be like, if we could, the analogy of the Wright brothers building the first plane. They didn't think about airports and visas and passports. What they thought about was the first airplane. And so the same way, you know, that they did not build a faster plane, the blockchain and Bitcoin is not the faster plane. But they do point out to decentralized finance, which is interesting, because now we know we don't need the banks to be able to have our own financial systems. And a lot can be said about, you know, where are we in that spectrum? Because what I see is a lot of lack of creativity, because you still need to trade them for money. But you start to see, for example, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that you can put, you know, any kind of custody things on it. You know, I was even thinking one day, like this thing is a mala, and I made it for one for me and one for my child. And I was thinking, wow, what if this one day goes to my grandchildren? And what if I would put a non-fungible token to it, and I would put movies and pictures, and I would put my prayers on it, and then I could talk about how I transitioned from this economy to the new one through my life experience. Wouldn't that make this object priceless and sacred?
Well, we're getting so much into the whole concept of sacred and sacred objects. I mean, this is stretching just, you know, ritual. I mean, this is stretching it in a good way towards all of it. Basically, anything that influences behavior, word use, what's associated with symbols, anything directing flows, tension, all of art. Ellen Dissanayake, who wrote a book, What is Art For?, calls art making special. Art directs attention, and that would be a currency, as I think you would put it. So much there. Ferananda, you've already begun to describe your offering. So I think that if you go to the Commons Engine, one thing you can do is you can sign up for something which is asynchronous, just a course that you could take as an individual, right? A course of study that you could, and then after that, what can you do that actually involves getting into groups and more intense?
Yeah, so that link is to a partnership with the MetaCurrency Project, and we did one track that we called Currency Design for Social Change Agents, but we're gonna produce more educational components like that, because we want it to be very accessible for people. And so in that, it's like about 4 hours or 6 hours of lectures that you can see with Arthur Brock, and speaking about all this in depth, really like, it's not for economists or even just currency designers. It's really about a literacy, a form of literacy on flow. So I would suggest it's very fun, it's very practical. And from there, Commons Engine, as I said, we're working on our website, and Sherry Herndon is with me here in the chat, in the class, and she and I were working in a new set of offerings where we are going to go with cohorts, meaning groups that are going to study together, but with their certain themes. For example, the care economy or community. And so that then people that are working on communities can be designing their currencies in a collective intelligence format, so that we have hot seats and we have different ways of applying the frameworks and the tools, because there's a lot of tools and frameworks and questionnaires and toolkits in the self-paced workshop that then you have to do by your own. But in a cohort, you can do it in a cohort, you can do it with others, you can activate through the design of other people. And I'm hoping that some other things would emerge, because there's so many things that are helpful to all of us. Like, many communities think about how to track contributions, how to work with volunteers. I mean, the decentralized autonomous organizations that are famous today, the DAOs, they work with governance and tokens. And so what are these? How do we track contribution, collaboration, performance? And these are common questions to many of us, and to many of us that want to activate more distributed types of organizations. And we also do high touch, which means we have specific clients that we work with, where we go, like, we love your project. We're raising, our sleeves, and we're just washing dishes with you. And that is very exciting for us, because that's where we go in depth to the discovery process and go with people to design their own currencies with them. So we have a set of clients that we do that with. So that's the way we work. And we will be announcing the cohorts by probably December through the Commons Engine. We're going to change our website very soon. And you can always contact me through my email, and we can talk. And I made sure that link has a 30% discount for everybody here, because we're pro-social and Commons Engine are definitely in the road of collaboration, and we're wanting to benefit the most people we can. And nobody stays out if they don't have money. So if you can contribute, write me a note. And we'll make sure that you can access that material for free.
That's great. And so let me take my turn very briefly for Pro-Social World. One is the Pro-Social Commons, which is what it's organizing this seminar. That's something that you could join, just like you said, Dunia, for anything you wish to contribute, including nothing. If that's your situation, that's just fine. And then that's a great incubator. And I can't wait for the social commoners to think about this, including our financial pool of resources, which we have, because everyone does donate, and we've actually generated our own common pool resource of money. But we haven't used it yet, because all those other forms of capital that you're talking about there, Ferananda. So, but I just love thinking about what we might do in the pro-social commons. And then for a much deeper dive into pro-social methodology, we have an experience pro-social course. I think it's a 6-month course that Dunia can put that's actually starting on Monday. But we'll put the link on that, and we'll be teaching that repeatedly, recurrently. So I think we're both trying to offer a range of offerings from light to deep, and the more we can get members of each other's communities doing that, of course, then we're knitting our communities together, and only good can come from that. So we have 5 more minutes before we're up. And well, let's see, who wants to raise their hand? And then I certainly, well, let me actually, well, no, let's see 5 more minutes. Who would like to continue this great conversation? Or Ferananda, you might want to just reflect anything we want for our remaining 5 minutes.
Yes, I would like to close because I feel so connected to you all in this moment. I want to reflect about how I'm feeling in this moment. Very, very thankful for the gift of your attention, for the gift of your presence of you all. Thank you. Thank you for gifting that, for giving that to all of us. And I believe we are in a spectacular moment of creation. And it's my biggest hope that we all take that role of creators, and that we take the roles of creators the same way that cells build multicellular organisms, and new life exploded from DNA, and there was this Cambrian explosion of life. We're gonna see this Cambrian explosion of life, and that we'll have the opportunity to position ourselves with our unique gifts, with our skill, with our heart, with our souls, just to be there together, to walk in this path that has so much challenge but so much beauty. And that thanks Goddess, or thanks Creator Spirit, we're not in a dystopian Hollywood movie. We are humans, and the community and relationship is the most important and vital thing that we have. We have our communities, we have each other, we have our togetherness, and now we have the technologies, and we had technologies for a long time, and we can activate it for the good. And I would want to kind of create the invitation for all of us to think about those gifts that we have that are so abundant. We want them to flow, and how we want them to benefit and create life, just like a river going through this riverbed and creating life and life and life all the way to the ocean. And I see each of us as that. I see each of us as a river of gifts, and a river of skill and mastery and presence and joy and heart. And as Clarissa Lepin-Colaestes reminds us, she says, nothing more like soul on deck is needed in these times. You know, so just like have our souls shine and be seen, that is one of the most precious flows. And maybe we won't see them in a map. We will just have to experience it for each other, and just praise one another for our life to be together living this adventure in these current times. So we are in a same generation, even if we have 8 and different years apart. We are in the same generation, in this beautiful time of transition, building bridges. So thank you everyone for all that you're doing, and let's keep on with the good work. And thank you everyone, and thank you David for the invitation, and I look forward for more sparks of beauty and creation. Thank you, Jeff, as well, for receiving me so well in ProSocial, and looking forward to continuing our conversations.
I wouldn't dare follow that with any other words, and so thank you so much, other than thank you. And so how great. And so this will be recorded, and this continues, and it will be catalyzed. I love that word, catalysis. So let's bring this about sooner rather than later, in years, not decades. And I do think that's possible along with you. I think I and many other people on this call do have a sense of hope that that we can bring this about for ourselves and for the world. And so you're so eloquent. And so everyone, we continue. And we'll see some of you next week. Remember, the times alternate, so the next one will be at noon, and then we continue. So thanks to everyone.